Welcome to Patreon Goes Postal. This is the feature where you've sent me some questions and I'm going to answer them. They've already been printed out for me in this convenient envelope, so let's have a read through some of these questions. Here are two separate questions that I think work pretty well together. Omega Riley asks, I want to see the soft side of the cynical asshole we've all come to know and love. I want a detailed description of your perfect first date. And Sarah Twist asks, thoughts on BDSM? Looks like the question's pretty well answered. To Omega Riley, as far as the soft side goes, perfect first date, I'm a big dinner guy, and the reason for that is you really get it out of the way, right? If it is disgusting, absolutely gross to watch another person eat, and because they're just horrible, then you might as well know that on the first date. No sense in being surprised on the second or third or fourth date. Just get it out of the way. What I like to do, this is a little move that I've come up with that you're welcome to try out yourselves, is take someone to dinner, somewhere, whatever, moderately priced, whatever you think might impress them based on their current level of whatever, and then you take them somewhere else for dessert. If you've got a nice place, some sort of chocolatier or something like that in your city, I would recommend that. Maybe some place that serves crepes or some sort of gourmet ice cream. Or if you don't really like them that much, take them to Dairy Queen. As for Sarah Twist and my thoughts on BDSM, so after the first date, if someone wants to go home, tie each other up, and everyone's cool with slapping each other around a little bit, no problems there. Thomas Greenway asks, do you still box at a gym, or have you picked another way to stay in shape? I do not currently box, and I believe I currently have picked another way to stay in shape, and that way is Nutter Butters. I would suggest them highly. Not if you're trying to lose weight, but if you're trying to maintain some semblance of a shape, then Nutter Butters. Chris Simpson asks, when you were in Japan, did you or did you not buy hentai? I did not buy any hentai when I was in Japan. However, we did go to a sex store where you could buy the women's underwear in the capsules. A lot of people think that those are just out in the open, that in Japan you can just go anywhere, any convenience store, or just out on the street, that there's these vending machines that sell women's underwear. And that's simply not true. They are only available in these various sex stores and things like that. I didn't buy any of those either. I think they wanted something like, I can't remember, 20 American dollars pretty much, like 2,000 yen or something like that for a pair, and I wasn't really interested. And what we did see in the store that was a little more disturbing, perhaps than, say, cartoon tentacles, was, I want to say the third, fourth, fifth floor, something like that. There was this giant display case with a sex doll that was made up to look like it was about 10 years old. And that was probably, you hear the rumors about what goes on in Japan, and you think, well, whatever, they're kind of wacky there. But you see that and you're like, oh, that's a little bizarre. But at the same time, I think, well, I guess if someone's using a doll and not the real thing, then maybe that's what Japan thinks. I've heard of other things that they have there. Apparently they have these subways you can go to. It's not a real subway, but you basically pay money to grope women over their clothing, and they are complicit. They're being paid to take part in this. It's all consensual, but in order to try and curb people who are doing this on the actual subway, this is an actual thing that they apparently have tried to do. I didn't find one of those either. I guess it was a pretty boring trip to Japan. Eventually, Emily asks, did you do the voiceover for the Orlando International Airport shuttle? The guy doing the narration sounds just like you. And Samantha Mose asks, I have a question I've been dying to ask. Did you do a commercial for Wacky Wings? I was in North Bay for my honeymoon and got dinner there, and the ad sounded just like you. So first to eventually Emily, actually to both of you, I guess I don't really know. I've done a lot of voiceover work over the years, and I can't remember everything that I've done, but I can tell you that something had to pay the bills for a dose of Buckley for those 10 years when I wasn't running ads or running a Patreon or anything like that. So certainly it's very possible. If you've heard a voice that sounds like my voice, then it's very possible that, yes, that was my voice that you heard. So I will say to eventually Emily, I do hope that you become actually Emily. And to Samantha Mose, I do apologize for you having your honeymoon in North Bay. I hope that Wacky Wings was not the highlight of it. But you know what? If you really love wings and they have the best wings, then at the same time, hey, great choice for your honeymoon. Augusto Martinez asks, who is your favorite rock band and why? And also biggest comedic inspiration. So my favorite rock band, if you want to call it a rock band, if we're not going to get too technical on, oh, well, this is this and this is that, is a band called KMFDM. They have been around since the 80s. They're an industrial band, and they've sort of run the gamut from more experimental, sort of early Nine Inch Nails type of stuff to a more electronic sound now, and a bit of a harder rock middle in there as well. And I've enjoyed quite a bit of their career, so I would say that KMFDM is probably my favorite rock band. I don't know if I answered why, other than I discovered them when I was about 13, 14, and I've listened to them for a long time now, and I don't know if I have a why. Why does anyone like anything they like, right? You hear something and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So, and biggest comedic inspiration, a lot of people think George Carlin is my biggest comedic inspiration, or Bill Hicks, but neither of those guys really were. George Carlin would have been my parents' comedian and didn't really do a lot for me. Unfortunately, maybe to a certain degree, is that growing up, my favorite comedian was Dennis Leary. I didn't know that he had basically stolen most of his act from Bill Hicks at the time, so all I knew was the Asshole song and things like that. Lewis Black as well, later on I discovered, acts like that do a lot of rant comedy, and then probably doesn't really show through in my work necessarily, but things like Monty Python, Kids in the Hall, a lot of sketch comedy, and that ability to just do things one and done, nice and quickly, 2 to 5 minute little snippets of comedy rather than these big, long, overarching, things like TV shows, sitcoms or anything like that, and just being able to tell a little bit of a story in a short period of time. And I think that a lot of that definitely was comedic inspiration for me and for A Dose of Buckley as well. Hooded Angel asks, do you think there's a correct amount of money to spend on a hobby? If your hobby is watching A Dose of Buckley, then the correct amount is $10 a month. Thank you. But I think that the correct amount to spend is whatever you feel comfortable spending. And that's obviously going to be different for everyone. But I don't think that anyone should break the bank on a hobby. I mean, you do you, but at the same time, if you like video games and you want to get yourself a video game every month and a full AAA title, and you can afford that $60, $70, $80 a month, and you want to enjoy that, and you can justify that by saying, well, you know what, I don't have any other vices, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, or, if those are your hobbies, and you're like, oh, well, I don't play video games at least, so you can go ahead and spend whatever you essentially feel like, but there are a lot of people who tend to let their hobbies get way out of control, and they're spending like half their paycheck, more than half their paycheck on their hobby, and that doesn't make any sense, and I would definitely advise against it. Even at my peak of buying comic books, I always made sure that I was always saving money at the end of each month, and that if I couldn't do that, then perhaps I shouldn't be spending money on my hobby. Russell Macias asks, back when you were a radio host, what was the weirdest phone call you got if people would call in? This one, hands down, no contest. The weirdest call I ever got was from a father who had requested the song Birthday Sex by Jeremiah for his daughter, who was 12. Absolutely the fucking weirdest call I ever got. And I ended up playing the song. I didn't mention that it was from the father. I didn't mention the child's age or anything like that. I just said, here's a song for a birthday, whatever the kid's name was. I didn't say it was a kid, so I just said happy birthday to name, and here's Jeremiah, and that was it. But definitely bizarre. I don't know why anyone would call in with that as a request for a 12-year-old. Yongguk is Ultimate Daddy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, asks, what is the best animal that ever lived? The factors deciding what makes it the best is up to you. An organism can be current or extinct. The best animal that ever lived, again, if I get to decide all the factors, then it's going to be really boring, but I'm just going to say pretty much any common house pet, any dog or cat for that matter. I'm not a big cat fan, but as far as it goes, they got it figured out. They've broken the food chain. They are at the top of their own food chain. We don't eat them. They just get to live and sleep, and someone feeds them and cleans up after their shit. And ultimately, I would say that they are at the top of the food chain, because if we die, then oftentimes they've found cats eating the eyeballs and other facial features of their owner after they've expired. So I would say that they obviously got it all figured out. Bayan asks, do you have a food faux pas that others judge you for, or you judge others for? Example, ketchup on a hot dog, pineapple on pizza, etc. Absolutely everyone judges me for how I eat. I am probably one of the most plain eaters that ever lived outside of perhaps Donald Trump. I do not burn a steak and then slather it in ketchup. However, I do put ketchup on hot dogs, and that's it. I eat cheeseburgers plain, so hamburger, cheese, bun, that's all you need on a hamburger. I eat, what else? Pizza is only meat. Rarely do I ever have a vegetable on a piece of pizza. I'll pick it off if I can, and if I absolutely can't, or I'm in a spot where, I'm among people where I just have to act like a normal human being for a change, I'll choke it down if it's like a green pepper or something like that, but absolutely no on mushrooms. And I think basically at one point, I wouldn't eat soup. All soups out. So probably one of the pickiest and plainest eaters that you'll ever meet, and constantly judged for it by friends, family, coworkers, passers-by on the street, whoever, waitresses, all of these people have constantly said to me, what is wrong with you? And whatever. I like it. Sustains my life, so I'm not too worried about it. And finally, we have Ben Drums, who asks, so I genuinely enjoyed your rants on how not to get a job in the broadcast entertainment industry. I run into those same kinds of issues in my own career. My question is, what actually makes a good DJ or other candidate for broadcast media? What compels a station to say, hey, this guy/girl is awesome, versus just any other run-of-the-mill aspiring DJ fresh out of college? I will tell you that in the current climate of radio DJing, pretty much what you just said there is that anyone aspiring fresh out of college probably has the best shot of all to get a job in radio right now, just because simply the money. And you're probably seeing it. If you're not noticing it, then I guess they're doing a good job. But your local radio station, I would guarantee you that maybe the morning show is live and maybe the afternoon drive show is live, but there's a very good possibility that neither of those are live anymore, and it's all recorded, what we call voice tracked in the industry by someone else somewhere else. And they could be, if you live in a smaller, more rural area that's just outside of a larger major metropolitan area, then it's very possible that their DJs are the ones hosting the show. And you'll probably notice that with the lack of local news, or the fact that almost all the stories are either national or more focused on that larger area and has nothing to do with your area. But yeah, for the most part, they are now just looking to find the absolute cheapest way possible. And if you notice that one of your favorite radio hosts gets cut, it was probably because they had already been paying them too much money. So that's it for me for Patreon Goes Postal. This was the first one of these, and hopefully we'll do some more. So if your question didn't get chosen this time, I will look back at those ones again. I'll ask for more questions. I'll try and get to some of those questions about dueling. For some reason, there was 2 questions about dueling that I didn't get to this time. So we'll see how that goes next time. But for now, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.